We're talking about routines today. What are routines? Yes, Dennis?
It's something you do after a point.
It's definitely something you do after a point. Is it limited to just after points?
No.
No. We're going to talk very specifically about an after point routine. But what are routines? If you had to describe them generally, how?
Something that you do at a specific time. Every single time it pops up, it's the same thing that you do.
Okay, so they're consistent. There's something you do over and over. How else would you describe it?
Something to take your mind off of the match.
Okay. Well, routines are used, definitely, to take your mind off the pressures of the match or the situation, potentially. But routines, they're a series of things or events that you're doing. They're productive behaviors. Right? What do I mean by productive behaviors?
I don't know.
And like not losing yourself, kind of like not going crazy, not getting upset.
Well, behaviors are what that we talk. They're the things we do. They're the things, you know, the attitude we have, the routines that we have. But what does productive behaviors mean? What does that mean? Because we all have certain behaviors, right?
Actions are that keep you focused and keep you present.
But in its core, what does productive mean for you? Productive.
Well,
What do productive things do? They
produce. They like make you more don't make you not concentrate.
So they're not negative. So productive things are not negative, but productive things help you.
Yeah.
They help you do the things that you need to do. Right? So productive behaviors are just things that you're doing, actions that you're undertaking that are going to help you. Right? And as Alex said, they're always executed. Right? So we'll talk about, in a minute, routines after a point. When you look at the professional players, okay, when you look at professional players, they're always doing the same thing over and over and again. If you don't repeat the same behaviors, is that a routine? No, that's just random actions. Some of which might help you, but today specifically we're talking about routines. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple of different videos from different sports, or a different sport, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how that might translate into tennis. So why are routines important?
Is there a golf pitch crumbs on the ground?
Yes.
They can make you concentrate and focus more because it can stop you from thinking about the past or the future and keep you.
So they definitely
keep you present.
help you concentrate. They increase concentration because they keep you in the present. It helps you focus in on what you're about to do. I love that. What else?
If you have like a routine before your serve, and you do it in practice, and you make your serve in, then during a match, if you do that same routine, you'll know that you're already going to make it in, because it becomes part of your routine. Do the routine, then make it in.
So a big part of the routine is being able to then execute, especially the serve, right? Because before serves or returns, before the point started, a lot of people have routines in those instances, right? But you're absolutely right. Having a routine on the serve helps you treat each serve like you've done it a million times before. So that we'll talk a little bit more specifically about it, but how many of you honestly practice your serve routine when you're warming up your serve versus when you're playing? Do you guys go through the full service routine when you're warming up serve?
I do, yeah.
Or do you go, hey Jack, did you see the game last night? Hey, you just hit serves, right?
That's what Jerry does.
That's what
Jerry does.
Yes, sometimes. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about the serve routine, but yes, it helps you deal with the serve over and over and over again, so it just becomes second nature. It becomes, well, you know, it becomes to the point where you don't have to think about it. What are the other benefits?
I was going to add to that by saying associating a certain movement in your serve that is successful, that hits a good serve with a routine can be really helpful when you're in a more stressful situation where you're not necessarily thinking about each portion and each movement that you're gonna make. Having something that your brain associates with those motions can make you make you do those do those necessary motions without actively having to go through everything in your head.
So without having to overthink or think too much about things, that's a brilliant response, by the way, right? Without having to think too much about it, what in turn can that do for you in a stressful situation? What do you think it might reduce? Stress, anxiety, nerves. That's why some of these top athletes that you see, even doesn't matter what portion of the match it is, they have the same routines. And then when it gets to match point up, match point down, an important point where I'm sure they're feeling the nerves, right? But they're still able to go out and execute because they've so closely tied things to their routine. Great answer, great answer. Anything else that routines get you to do? Think about the routine in between points. What is the goal? Whether you won or lost the last point, what's the goal with the routine?
Move on. To make you move on.
So you're going to move on, but what else?
Like if you do your routines after a point, it'll take your mind off the match and on your strings or whatever. And then when you get back, you're not gonna be as stressed out.
That's good. So there's different parts of the routine between points, but hopefully it's going to get you ready to play the next point. Right? The whole goal, whether you've won the point, lost the point, played well or played badly, is by the time you've gone through your routine, you are actively ready to play the next point. Does that make sense? So hopefully, increases concentration, gets you ready for the next point, reduces the tension a little bit. All of these things that are going to help us when we get into tough situations. So let's talk about two different routines, right? The before the serve routine is pretty much attached to the in between the points, unless it's the very first point of the match. But say, for example, it's in the middle of a game, right? And you're about to play a point. It's 15 all. The points just ended. You won the last point, lost the last point, doesn't matter. What are we going to do from the moment that point ends all the way through to the serve routine? Give me some examples of some things that you see. Either you do, you see pros doing, you see other players doing. Yes, Dennis?
Fiddling with their strings.
What do you mean by fiddling with their strings?
Maybe pushing this string.
So you're moving the strings
to
around.
side,
You're moving the strings around.
Pushing this string up.
Perfect.
And then this string back to the other side.
Perfect. By the way, now we use certain types of strings where the strings aren't very often out of position.
Yeah, my strings don't move.
Okay, so why do people still look and move the strings?
To degree focused.
Say again?
Because they're nervous.
Because they're nervous, or maybe they're trying to find a way to not be so nervous. It's less about actually fixing the strings. Once upon a time, I used to use strings that moved all over the place, so I would literally have to try and move the strings back in between points. Now it doesn't happen very often, especially with polyester strings. So it is more part of a routine. What else do pros do?
There's all this crazy thing where he touches.
Okay.
You know,
So before he serves, he starts touching his face a lot,
He goes
wipes the
like that,
sweat.
wipes the sweat and puts his hair behind.
Before we even get there though, what do other people? What are some of the other things that you've done?
Personally?
Towel. Oh my goodness, that annoys the heck out of me sometimes. Yes, you're sweaty. Yes, you need the towel. But do you think that the players need a towel after the opponent's double faulted?
No.
No. But it is part of their routine. There are some players that must or feel they must go to the towel after each point. Hands up if you've seen what I'm talking about.
Oh my.
Oh,
Yeah?
yes. But I've never played someone
Personally
like
or
that.
just pros?
No, if you've seen it. Like, have you seen it on the TV? Because there are many players around here who go to the towel every time because it would take forever because they don't have a ball boy or girl running up and giving them the towel. If you were in charge, well, you are in charge, but if you were constructing your own routine and we've got to get from the end of the point to the start of the next one, what are the different phases right? So you've just finished a point. What do you think you might have to do after just finishing a point?
Acknowledge what happened.
Acknowledge what happened. Great, so you have a response. So you have a response, maybe it's a fist bump, maybe you look up, maybe you let out a scream. Like, let's be honest with you, we're not here to be absolutely perfect, but if you are frustrated or if you're happy, you have a response. You accept what has happened, hopefully, and not let it dwell. But right after that, that's exactly what you do. You respond, and then what happens after that? What do you need to do after having that response? When people are toweling off or when they're looking at their strings, what are you trying to do you think? Have a stab at it.
Concentrate on the next point and concentrate.
Almost, right, that's coming. But before you can focus on the next point, what do you very often need to do?
Move on from the last point.
So you're moving on, you're part of the moving on.
Think about what you did.
This is important. But there's one thing, if you've had a really long point or you've had a really tense point and your energy levels are up here, what do we have to do first?
Calm down.
Calm down. Sounds so easy, sounds so obvious, right? But we need to take a couple of seconds to calm down from the previous point. Even if it was a double fall, if it was a 30-ball rally, it doesn't matter, we need to calm down. Because then when we've calmed down, we can start thinking about the next point. How long do you get between points?
25 seconds.
25 seconds. Is 25 seconds a long time?
No.
Yes.
I heard no's and I heard yeses. Why no?
Because 25 seconds.
Because
A minute goes by like that, and like 25 seconds is a quarter of a minute.
All right, I'm gonna do an experiment. Ready?
15 is a quarter.
Well, time is relative, guys.
I'm gonna do an experiment. Hey, guys, quiet, please. I'm gonna do an experiment. No one's allowed to talk. I do want everyone just to close their eyes, and I'm gonna say start and stop. Ready? Start. Stop. Open your eyes. That was 25 seconds.
Time flies faster when you're on.
So when you're watching TV or when you're actually playing a point, it may seem like time goes really quickly. But if you just take some time and just kind of close your eyes,
still really short.
Still really short.
Yeah.
For me, it felt like an age.
I counted 23 seconds in.
But hang on, in that time, I'm not saying it felt like an hour, but in that time that you had your eyes closed, is that enough time to calm down and prepare for the next point?
Yes.
Yeah, plenty of time. Unless your name's Nadal or Djokovic, who seem to go through a million different things and they're part of their routine. Djokovic bounces the ball 25 times. Nadal does all his pre-serve rituals, right? Most people use about 10 to 15 seconds of that time. And when you're doing something mentally, you might go through your routine very quickly. So, point finishes. We have a physical reaction, a positive, negative, but we acknowledge what happened. Then we need to calm down. After we calm down, we're preparing for the next point. But what does that mean? What goes into the preparation for the next point?
Refocus.
Sure, absolutely. Get your focus back. But what do you mean by prepare for the next point? Do you just walk up to the line, hit a serve? No.
No,
So
uncomfortable.
you're about to serve. It's 30 all. What are some of the things that you need to do before you step up to the line to serve?
Bounce the ball up.
Before you step up
What
to
are
the
my
line.
strengths?
But we've already done that.
Oh.
So we've calmed down. We've looked at the strings. We've gone to the towel. This is the preparation part.
Do this. I do this.
This is the preparation part. What's missing right now? We're just about to play a point, and you're serving. So what are you thinking about?
Getting the balls.
Your game plan.
What you're
Your
gonna do.
game plan. What you're going to do. Where am I going to serve? Where might the opponent hit the ball back to me? And how am I going to try and win the point? So that's all part of the routine and the preparation. Then, after then, you step up to the line. So you see how routines between points are so much more than just the service motion. So now we're up to the line, yes, now we have the ritual and the routine that goes into the serve. Think about your own serve. Before you hit the ball, before you throw up the toss, what do you do on the serve?
Bounce the ball.
How many times?
3.
Twice.
Like
Then I do something else.
5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 4.
How many of you bounce the ball the same amount of times each time?
No, first serve 3, second serve 5.
Okay.
Precisely calculated.
So I'm pleased to see that everyone either bounces it the same, or bounces it the same for different serves. It doesn't matter as long as you have a routine. Okay? So when I was playing, I used to bounce at 6, and then maybe I would go through a period where it would be 4, but it didn't matter. Wherever I was mentally, it would always be the same amount of bounces for that match or for that tournament or for that period of time, and then it would change occasionally, right? Routines change, but I would always have the same amount of bounces. Now to go one stage further, once you've bounced the ball and you set up, what else do you guys do? Anything? Do you throw the ball up and just go boom?
No.
What else?
You look at the box.
Okay, you look at the box. So you look at where you're looking to try and serve. Yes, Dennis?
Look at your opponent.
Look at the opponent. See where they're standing. Maybe if you've decided to serve down the tee and they're standing right by the tee, maybe you change your mind, right? So the one extra thing that I used to do, all of those things, look at the opponent, kind of look around the service box. When I finished bouncing the ball, I would make sure that my arm muscles, my leg muscles, the racket was loose in my hand. I would do all just those kind of things, go through a little checklist. Then when I did that, I would serve and hopefully would play out the point, be successful. So it's important that you guys have a routine between points. Is it important that that routine stays the same until you guys go off to college?
Yes.
Yes!
No.
You're going to have the same routine for the next 9 years?
Yeah.
Yep.
If you do, fair enough. Routines need to be the same time and time and time again,
That was correct.
but they need to be flexible because times change, your mental state might change, your game might change, right? So we have to have the ability to make changes over time. I'm going to show you one more video. We've got 10 minutes left.
Oh,
Okay, so before we make up our own routines, Dennis, we just watched some routines from rugby kickers, right? What are the similarities between that and someone who's about to hit a serve?
Dead ball.
They look kind of funny, a lot of them, right? And that's why that
Especially the
compilation was
last
put together. But what are the similarities between kicking a rugby ball for some extra points or a penalty kick versus hitting a serve?
you always have to visualize where like you're gonna kick it and how it's gonna go. And
So visualization can be part of the routine, for sure. What else?
Well, it all depends on you, like what you do, how you.
Yeah, none of those routines were the same, right?
Nope.
Some of them were pretty extreme, but they were all very, very unique. So that's the one thing. If we can take something out of all of these classes, it's that the mental skills are extremely important in sports and in tennis specifically, but that no two people are alike, and that you can't just do the same thing as everyone else and expect it to work. You're all different, you're all very unique people and tennis players. So we have to do things that work for us. How are we going to figure out what works for us, by the way?
By trying and failing.
By trying lots of different things and figuring out things that don't work for us, as well as things that work for us. So that hopefully we find whatever it is, whatever we're looking to do with our tennis, to help us achieve those goals. Right? But we're all very, very different. What works for me, myself and Doug, we've played on a team together, and I can tell you this, Our routines about the way we approach the serve, the routine on the return, all very, very different, right? But if Doug tried to do some of the things I did, or think about some of the things I did mentally, it might drive him crazy, right? And vice versa. So you've got to find some things that work for you and stick with them. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, by the way, because this is very, very personal to you. So on that note, we've talked about bouncing the ball before a serve. But what are some of the things that you think, for you personally, doesn't matter what anyone else does, that you're going to try and implement into a routine between a point?
Fiddling with my strings.
So looking at your strings, trying to move them around a little bit just to get your focus back and ready. Yes?
I spin my racket around.
Okay, so spinning your racket's a lot more productive than hitting yourself. I like that one. Right? How are you guys going to calm down? Because we talk about accepting what happened in the last point, calming down, and then getting ready for the next point. How are you guys going to calm down? What can we use that we've already talked about in mental skills? Breathing. Right? Nice deep breathing in between points.
Emotional control.
Emotional control, right? Finding ways, thought stopping, move on from what's just happened so that you can calm down and then you can move on. Okay. Last question I got for you.
Are we gonna make up our own routines?
Not right.
So here's some optional homework, which means maybe one person might do it.
I will.
See, I figured it might be you, Jess. I would love to see if any of you have the time to write down your in-between point routine. So I'd like to see it so we can talk about it. I'm going to write down mine for next week. If anyone else wants to write down theirs so we can talk about it, maybe make some suggestions or see how that is between now and next week. Because you're all going to play tennis before the next time I see you, right?
Yep.
Hopefully you're going to be playing some serve points. So if you're not very good at using those routines right now, let's try and find a routine, settle on it, and try and use it in practice between now and next week. Any questions about routines? Ladies and gentlemen, have a great week. Enjoy your tennis. We'll see you then.
Somebody